almost talk with coded language, and it's not so coded. So it's a really interesting moment, I think, to be thinking about the way race plays out and operates in personalized politics. So what I'm going to try and do today is, in no more than 10 minutes, is to just really briefly and probably dangerously distill each of these papers down to what I see as their essence in a couple sentences. To offer some very specific questions related to each, and then to offer a couple more general questions, particularly that stem from my interest in historical memory and how historians think about and relate to and talk about historical memory. So first, David in his paper explores the historical moment around the speech, around the 1980 Ronald Reagan speech. And his basic argument, which I think is really a reasonable one, is the speech should not be read as a simple story of Reagan or Republicans playing the race card to appeal to white voters, that the story is in fact far more complex. And he points to two of those ways in which the story is far more complex. One is that the Republicans themselves had not decided upon a Southern strategy that was coherent at this point, and we're still making lots of efforts to reach out to black voters. The other is, as he says, the Democrats were really no better, right? And I want to thank him particularly for giving me an excuse to watch the Saturday Night Live episodes and make a research. So I found on my television I could access Saturday Night Live episodes from 1977 when Julian Bond was the host. Back in the day when Saturday Night Live was actually fighting. And this scene that they did with Julian Bond as a Georgia State Senator going to talk to Jimmy Carter, played by Dan Aykroyd, where Dan Aykroyd keeps saying, let me tell you about the shoebox that I grew up in. And Julian Bond saying, Mr. President, there's real problems facing black people. It's a real issue that you're really into human rights. How about rights for us? And at the end of the skit, Carter leaves by saying, oh, I got to have a very serious meeting. There's a Turkish seaman being held prisoner in a Pakistani prison, and he's being underfed. Excuse me, gotta go. All right, and so certainly in 1977, African Americans were making very biting, and more generally popular culture, very biting commentaries about Carter, about the Democrats, about political culture. And ultimately, David argues that by focusing so much on that speech, Democrats, and he points to scholars and points the fingers at us, have excused similar racist political actions by the Democrats and have promoted a narrative that confines racism to the GOP and the white South, a narrative that serves to obscure institutional racism and systemic racism that both parties participate in, like urban renewal programs, housing policy, etc. Now, Angela's paper I thought was interesting because it seems in some ways to reflect the tendencies that David is arguing are problematic. Right? She's not really talking about the speech, but she's using it as a representative of a larger process of the transformation of the American right and of shifts in language and ideologies related to civil rights. And in her paper, she focuses on the strange story of the political relationship between James Meredith and David Duke. And she argues that this story is in fact representative of two larger processes. One is a shift in the political culture that's taken place since the 1960s. And here she says it's not Meredith that's changing. He's pretty darn consistent in the way he presents himself and his beliefs. It's the political culture that's shifting around him that makes it possible for someone like a David Duke and someone like a James Meredith to come together and to emphasize together the dangers of big government, what might be now called the nanny state, the dangers it presents to individual rights, individual initiative, etc. And she says this strange coalition is also illustrative of a larger process by which the support of black conservatives have made it easier for white conservatives to claim that their program is not racist or based on racial thinking. So she sees both Duke and Meredith to some extent engaging in a politics of race and right created by or indebted to Reagan. I found both of these papers really interesting and compelling, despite what I see as sort of a fundamental disagreement between them in the role that this 1980 speech and the way they're reading the 1980 speech. I had two sort of specific questions for each, or in general, and then a few larger questions. One is, I know these are both much larger projects, and these are short excerpts from much larger projects, and so I would really welcome a conversation with both Angela and David, particularly about how the processes of representation they're talking about actually worked. So they're complicating historical moments, but for David's case, it's, he's talking about Democrats pointing to this speech in order to absolve themselves of blame and to pin blame on Republicans. And I want to see more of that process over time.